Tune in Monday through Friday here on Money for Lunch. And check out our website at moneyforlunch.com.
All right, we are back. My next guest, Mark Guidi. Mark Guidi is an executive coach, business consultant, and speaker. He has held senior leadership positions for Fortune 500 firms, where most recently he served as senior vice president of corporate strategy for a multi-billion-dollar financial services company. He's also spent 10 years as a strategic advisor in Big Four management consulting, where over 2-year period, he analyzed over 50 startups for potential private equity investment. Mark Guidi, welcome to Money for Lunch.
Thank you, Bert. It's great to be here. Happy Tuesday.
Absolutely. All right. So right now, you're currently the CEO of Centered Business Consulting, which helps small to middle-sized businesses grow revenue and profitability by better bridging strategy. And I want to talk about a little bit about what you guys do at centeredbusinessconsulting.com. Kind of give us a thumbnail sketch of who your client is. What is it that you guys do at Centered Business Consulting?
Yeah, sure, Bert. So basically, we're a boutique firm that really focuses on two things, primarily on small to middle market businesses, as you mentioned, to help them grow revenue in a profitable manner. And secondly, I also work as an executive coach with a number of the kind of mid to senior level executives, again, similar types of businesses, to help them improve their leadership effectiveness, which again, the more effective the leaders are, it's been clearly demonstrated that allows businesses to thrive and grow both revenue and profit. So we kind of combine those two things along with our specific methodology and approach to basically help businesses stay on track, stay focused, and ensure they're being successful.
Absolutely. All right, so I want to ask you this. Here you are, as I mentioned in the intro, you spent a lot of time and you've analyzed over 50 startups. What have you seen? When you're out there and you're looking at these companies, what do you see as the biggest differences between a successful startup and maybe one that's not so successful?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually get to ask that question quite a bit. The reality is there is no silver bullet to this. I wish there was, and I wish I discovered it, because I'd probably be retired on an island somewhere if that was true. You can go out on Google, you can get your list of everybody and their brother's cousins' views on what makes a startup successful, market timing, investor sentiment, quality of employees, et cetera. There's the whole list out there. From my experience, what I've really seen that certainly, I don't know if guarantees is the right word. I'm not sure anything in life is guaranteed, but in terms of increasing the probability of success, it really comes down, from my perspective and my experience, to one thing, and that's focus. And a lot of people talk about focus, but when I talk about focus, I'm really talking about focus across three specific areas. I call them the 3 C's of focus, and they are customer, communications, and concentration. And I found if startups that can maintain that actually have clarity of focus going in and can maintain that focus across their customers, communications, and concentration, they certainly do seem to have a higher probability of success on those that seem to stray from those.
It's such an interesting thing that you say that, this clarity of focus. Clarity is so important, this idea of focus and being able to maintain that clear vision, that clear focus. What I find so interesting about this is that you didn't mention money, technology, experience. You mentioned this one strategy that really is a level playing field. Everybody has an opportunity to master this focus, but it's not necessarily an easy thing to do.
No, it's not, and that's from my experience, where I've seen a lot of times, not only from the time back when I was doing the investment analysis for private equity clients, but just in working with small businesses and startups, and even some larger businesses, a lot of times they'll start out with very clear focus. Who is our customer? What are we trying to provide to them? Making sure that they communicate what's going on, good news, how things are going, all the great things, and ensuring that the concentration, another word for that is really energy. Where are you spending your time, your resources, your physical energy, mental energy, emotional energy? Those are generally aligned when you start. What happens a lot of times that I've seen is that something happens. I'm always reminded of a quote by a source that's probably not necessarily that associated with business, but that the former champion boxer Mike Tyson, right? Some of your listeners may have heard the quote, but his quote was that everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And so a lot of times businesses go in, they've got clarity on their focus, something happens, the equivalent of a punch in the face, and they get thrown off their game, and they lose their focus, and they try to do too much, or they shut down, or they shift where they're concentrating, and that's where they start to stumble, and then other factors can come into play. If the market's against you, if the investor sentiment shifts, then all of a sudden you can have a compounding effect. But I would agree, it all starts out with a pretty level playing field.
It's what do you call it? What a great quote to remember. We all have a plan until we get it punched in the face.
Yep.
And the reality to that is, sooner or later, no matter how good your plan is, you will experience some equivalent to being punched in the face. There's no getting around that.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Well, let me ask you this.
It happens in life.
That's right. That's right. So let me ask you this. What do you think? What are the causes or drivers that result in startups becoming less successful? You mentioned focus. What else?
Yeah, so I think when I think about it, and the way I've got my model structured is really what kind of can throw somebody off kilter, and I've really got it down to two. I'm sure there's more, but I see two that are the most common. The first one is really around purpose, and really losing your clarity of purpose. So you mentioned earlier, you were maybe a little surprised I didn't mention some of the more money and whatnot. Money is really not a purpose. I don't know of any successful company who set out as a purpose as to make money. Right? That's not really a purpose. That's an outcome, but it's not a purpose. Same thing with, even if you click down into that, right, in terms of bringing a new product to market. That's not really a purpose. Again, that's more of a how you want to do it. But what is the problem you're trying to solve, and for whom? And that's where I see a lot of companies start to try to do too much or do too many things to too many people, and then that starts to confuse their customers. They're like, well, do you do this or do you do that, or how do you do that? And I'm not sure now if you're really the right company, and all of a sudden things start to spiral out of control. So the first one is that can drive a change in focus is really losing clarity of purpose. The second one is really fear. And again, it's another word that people throw around a lot. And I think I'm a big believer, frankly, that fear of failure is actually quite a good motivator, as long as you don't let it overwhelm you. Where I've seen a lot of companies, particularly in the very early stages, stumble is actually fear of success. And a lot of folks are like, well, God, what is fear of success? What does that have to do with it? Well, it can manifest itself in a number of ways. A couple of examples. One is pricing. You may say, gosh, we're just coming into the market. Nobody knows us. So, I'm not sure if what we're bringing is as valuable or maybe considered as valuable as other larger, better known companies. So I'm going to price really low. And you actually end up undercutting yourself, because I'm a big believer in the philosophy that there is value associated with higher price. Obviously, you've got to have it aligned, but don't go in super low just because, you don't feel like you've got a foothold in the market. Another great example is being too humble. like you got to communicate. Make sure everybody knows all the great things that you and your team are doing, and don't discount every single success, particularly in the really early days of a startup. You've got to make sure everybody's aware of that, and you'd be surprised at how oftentimes companies just take that for granted, or they're like, good, we did that, success, check, move on, do the next thing, and they end up lurching from one success to the next, but they're never communicating it out to the world to let everybody know. So I've really seen the focus be shifted from two things. Like I said, it's really losing clarity of purpose and letting fear take over, whether it be fear of failure or fear of success.
Yes, I agree with you. I think that whether you're Donald Duck or Donald Trump, we all have to deal with our fears. And sometimes it is fear of failure. What if I do all this work and it doesn't, and it's not successful? Or sometimes it's fear of success. What if I'm successful and people judge me or think that I'm a bad person or whatever? These sound funny, but these are true things that hold people back. Speaking of Donald Trump, I think to me Donald Trump's a great example of being a good promoter. Donald Trump has no problem telling you what he's done and how awesome it is. Now, he doesn't say he's awesome so much, but he'll say, hey, I just built this, this is the best thing I just built, or the best hotel, and it's wonderful, and everybody's going to love it, and you should go out there and see it. It's a great hotel. It's better than anything currently on the market. He is promoting his property, and some people find him arrogant, and he might be. But if you look at anybody who is a top dog in their business, they're very good at promoting themselves and or promoting their accomplishments. Steve Jobs was a great promoter. Arnold Schwarzenegger, great promoter. We already mentioned the Donald. The list goes on. Lee Iacocca, great promoter. Peter Thiel from PayPal fame, great promoter. Elon Musk, he's a great promoter. So if you want to be like some of these people, I think you got to take on some of these attributes. And I'm so glad that you brought this up, that for some reason, Mark, we have built a society. We're so worried about political correctness and not trying to be boastful, and we should kind of play down our accomplishments, that we do that to the extent of actually hurting our growth, because we're supposed to accomplish something and then play it off like you said, oh, it's not a big deal, thank you so much, and let's just, get back to work. And I think a lot of people just get demotivated because not enough celebration has taken place for what they just accomplished.
Yes, no, I totally agree, and I think the examples you named are fantastic. We can take the most, the one that's most currently in the news, right, as the Trump, right? So whether you agree with his politics or not, whether you like him or not as a person, doesn't matter. He is a great promoter of what he does. Now, do you have to take it to that extreme? No, but you definitely need to get out there. And I find a lot of companies, particularly a lot of younger CEOs that are just starting out their businesses, or even some that have done a few, they're just not comfortable. And to your point, I think we have built up this society where we've actually swung the pendulum almost too far to one end, where it's not politically correct to raise your own flag and tell people, hey, I just did something great, you should come check it out. And you can do that, in a really loud way like Donald does, or you could do it in a more, using a little more humility perhaps, but you got to get the message out. That's the key, and lack of doing that will ultimately trip you up. And I'll say this too, Bert, just to add on to that, the communications piece needs to be both good and bad. And so what I mean by that is, if something goes wrong, equally important to get out ahead of that and communicate. A lot of times I see companies, particularly smaller ones, they're like, we're small, no one will notice. It just doesn't work anymore. In today's connected society and world, somebody will notice, and then all of a sudden you're playing defense and trying to catch up. So I actually encourage my folks that I work with, my clients, to make sure that you're communicating both good news, but also if something goes wrong, communicate it, get out ahead of that, and control the messaging. Let folks know that you know about it and what you're doing to fix it, and move on. But don't hide from it, because that usually doesn't end in a good result.
That's right. I'm glad you pointed that out. Yes, in today's much smaller world, even a small company can be killed by bad reviews. And if you don't think those reviews work, then you are living under a rock, because there are literally hundreds of review sites. Yelp is a fairly famous one, and there's a bunch of other ones that ePinions is another one, but that thrive and make millions of dollars in profits from helping people express their opinions. So yes, I'm glad you brought that up. Let me ask you this. Can you share some techniques or methods that you have found to help businesses avoid or recover from mistakes?
Yeah, I can, Bert, actually. So what I do is again, just given my background, I try to operate at the integration point using tools, techniques, and methods from management consulting, executive coaching, and interestingly enough, actually martial arts. I've done martial arts for many, many decades, both as a student and a teacher. And so really, I've got kind of a three-step process that I try to help my clients clear the fog and either maintain their focus or regain it if it's been lost. And it's pretty straightforward. It's basically center, focus, and achieve. And so the 30-second version of this is basically centering is really where you help clarify or re-clarify what really matters most. Why are you in this business? What are you trying to achieve? And who are you trying to help? And do it in a clean, simple way that everybody, not only the CEO or owner, but all the employees, the investors, your clients, everybody can clearly understand and remember. I think everybody, the great example of that is Nike, right? I mean, granted, they're not a startup anymore, but, just do it. I mean, who doesn't know that? I mean, it's just a great thing. So how do you kind of condense it down into something that's very clear and memorable that can stay front and center to everybody? The second one is really around focus, not to be confused with the issue that we were talking about a little earlier, but it's really around defining what are you going to tackle. Prioritization is another way to think about this, right? What are you going to do first? What are you going to do second? What are you going to do third? How are you going to go about actually accomplishing what you defined in your centering piece, which is what are you going to do? And then the third one is really achieve. And again, this is one of those things where I find a lot of companies I work with, it comes down to execution, and a lot of times they stumble here because they in the heat of battle they drop things. And so really, what is the clearly defined plan of action that you're going to do to execute on your prioritized list of things that you agreed to focus on that are going to help you achieve your goals? Right? And how do you measure that? And the key there is really comes down to measurements to make sure that you can track your progress and ensure that you are, in fact, doing what you said you're going to do. And if you're not, catch it early enough that you can adjust before it becomes a disaster. So that's kind of the approach that we take, center, focus, achieve, and it's not that hard. We try to keep it simple to help businesses move forward because they want to go quick, right? So.
Absolutely. Good stuff there. Mark, it's been a blast having you on the show. Looking forward to having you back again. Mark Guidi.
Guidi. That's all right.
Guidi. Mark Guidi. Mark Guidi. That's right. And for everybody listening, he spells his last name Guidi, which is a little different, but Guidi. So I know for you Italianos, you're thinking, what's the problem? But for us guys from Cuba, we just don't get it that quickly. Anyway, Mark Guidi, thank you so much for stopping by. It's been a blast. We'll have you back again soon.
Look forward to it, Bert. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
All righty. Good stuff there from Mark Guidi. Just and I hope that you guys picked up that it didn't take technology or money. A lot of it was just the strategy. And strategy is so important. Strategy is really what makes or breaks you, or in some cases, lack of strategy.